This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. On Black Friday, I was kind of looking for some stuff, and I was looking around and I was looking at things that kind of were Tube Screamer based or that sort of thing, and thinking, you know, I've had enough actually. I've got plenty of Tube Screamers, I've got plenty of things like that. And this came up, it was like, in its box, looked to be in really clean condition, and I thought, do you know what? Maybe I'll try this. This is it was 580 is what I ended up paying for it. Now, obviously, that's a lot of money to pay for a Korean-made pedal, but it is a 90s Nobels ODR1, so hopefully it will like hold its value. It's got me kind of rethinking drive pedals in general, because I've never really had an ODR1 type pedal that I've got on with. The ODR1 has been kind of brought to the forefront for me by players like Tom Bukovac, and then you see it across like all of Nashville boards. Something Nobel's flavour is on a lot of players' boards. The Tom Bukovac thing is kind of like he points them out in a blind test versus Tube Screamers and stuff like that, and kind of points out that there's not this honkiness the same way that a Tube Screamer has. For me as well, I kind of felt like, compared to a Tube Screamer, like the bottom end doesn't fall out of the tone, which is kind of what happens with the Tube Screamer live, and that's been why, for me, I've kind of struggled with the Tube Screamer when I've had it on my board, playing it live. It's kind of like, I'm not really turning that thing on often. I've since realised that a Tube Screamer for me only really works as a lead pedal, as someone that plays into a clean amplifier generally. So that's kind of been a bit of a revelation this year. But I've kind of thought, well, actually, this flavour of pedal kind of does all of those things a little bit better than other flavours of pedal that I've tried. I've also been like heavily down this Dumble sort of pedal rabbit hole, and then you go to demo a pedal on YouTube or whatever, like the Van Wielden, and it's kind of, people are just like, well, it just sounds like a Tube Screamer, and maybe has some of those same issues, or it doesn't sound like a Dumble. The Nobels ODR1, what I kind of like about it is that it's not really trying to sound like anything. It kind of just sounds like it does, and either it works for you or it doesn't. This doesn't have the bass cut, which I think came a bit later. There is some good news to this, which is that basically you can get this sort of tone for less than £580. For instance, the Vemiram Shanks ODS1, John Shanks, I do want to do a video on his board as well, this is the Vemiram version of the ODR1. Same sort of vibe, great sounding pedal. If you don't have £400 to spend on one of these things, I'm hopefully going to do a video with Nobels on this, but this is the ODR1X, which to me as well can sound very similar to the Vemiram, can sound very similar to the ODR1, has its own thing going on in the same kind of vein as these, where it's like not a tube screamer, not some other drive, but kind of does some things really well with a guitar. Now the idea here would be that if I can find something that is a flavour that does which is like various levels of drive really. And I think you might be able to tell, like the difference seems to be, to me, that it's a bit more of a natural overdrive. Really powerful tweakability, whereas like the mid-range on the Angry driver I can't. So this can be more scooped or more mid-heavy. Whereas this one is kind of just a lot of mid. Quite a lot of the time. And I found it didn't necessarily. I just think it's a flavour for me which is new, but also I think closer to what I'm looking for. This isn't going to work for everyone, but here into a Fender Deluxe reverb. It's cutting out so much bottom end. think it's just because the Nobels is louder. I prefer the mid-range of this pedal, I think. And the sag in the middle of the note. This, conversely, to me now sounds a little bit barky. This was one of my favourite drives. It's been on my board all year. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a revelation for me, and I'm thinking that actually maybe this is what I should be building my tones around a bit more, given that I found that when I shot out the shanks with a bunch of other pedals, like an SD1, tube screamers, you know, that sort of thing, that I found like the ODR1 kind of did more of what I like. I think my conclusion after putting the real one in front of a deluxe reverb is that this is preserving low end in a way that a lot of these other pedals are kind of designed to sort of not do that. And for me, when I'm playing a single coil guitar, some of this is ending up affecting the feel, I think, as much as the tone. When I compare now the Boss Angry driver to this, it to me is a little bit more barky and is shaving off some of that lower end, which could be totally useful for a lot of players, particularly if you're using humbuckers, particularly I think if you're going into a driven amp. I'm tending to go into a clean amp, and that's why I think that this is working quite nicely with single coils, and it's preserving some of that amp like feel for me, because I'm more likely to pick a lighter, I should say, because that kind of low end is preserved. I'm getting more of that feel of the notes coming through, and maybe some of that bloomy stuff. The conclusion for me is that some variant of a Nobels should be on my pedal board. The good news for anyone else watching this video is that you probably don't have to spend £580 on a Nobels ODR1 to figure this out, because Nobels still make pedals, and I think they're actually closer in terms of function and tone than you might expect. And Vemuram Shanks ODS is an expensive clone if you're looking for that sort of thing. I think J-Rocket with the Guthrie Trap Overdrive have their version. Wampler have a couple of versions. There's the Bell, is it called the Bell Epoch? And also I think the Paisley Drive. So there are lots of variants now of the Nobels thing. But I would maybe even start with this one. It would be kind of my thoughts, and shoot it out with your other drives. If you're not finding that you're getting on with some of your drives, is maybe what I would suggest. And now that I've tried them side by side, I'm really liking the Nobels flavour.